Good morning.
Commissioner, you're free to proceed.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning. I'm calling the Trees and Green Infrastructure Committee meeting to order at 10 o'clock on Friday, March 12th, 2021. And we will start with a roll call. And after the roll call, I'm going to give a brief membership update because we've had a couple of changes in our committee. But first, just either wave or say here. Lise Burns.
Here.
Andrea Hoffman.
Here.
Joan Flaherty.
Here.
Commissioner Richard Byrne.
Good morning, here.
Francis Markert.
Here.
Robert Van Horn.
Here.
Katie Downs is here, but not on screen at the moment. There she is. Katie Downs here. Okay, great. And we have an update. First of all, Bunky, if you want to give your update first.
All right. I've been appointed as the chair of the Parks and Shade Trees Commission. And we have actually conducted our first special meeting this week, 2 days ago. And I just felt for purposes of being the chair, it's probably appropriate that I resign from this commission. And I want to wish you all well in continuing your pursuits to benefit the city with this committee, and in any way that I can assist as appropriate. I know I have a role to play in the Arbor Day festivities, whatever, you know. So anyway, but I'm still here, but that's as far as formally participating in the commission. I'm going to bid adieu here, but I've certainly enjoyed working with all of you and all the people that I've worked with in prior iterations of this committee, and I think it serves a great function for the city, and I wish you all well.
And we wish you well.
Yeah,
in your new position.
Glad
Thank
you're
you.
in that position.
Okay. So if you want me to leave, I'll leave, or I can just.
Oh, you can stay today if you want. That part's totally up to you. You can certainly.
Yeah, I'll hang out, but I'm not going to participate.
I mean, since we're talking about objectives of the tree ordinance, that's probably a good segue meeting for you. But anyway, okay. So then the other thing is Terry Eskew had resigned to pursue some other activities that she is doing. So, and you know, we've had the good fortune since the beginning to be, first of all, one of the most populous committees. We had 9 people. Most committees don't have that. I think at one point we actually had 10. And so we have currently 7, and Liza Trey has applied to be on the committee, and I was planning to nominate her if she's still interested after hearing us all today. And so I invited her to join us as a guest, as other new members have done in the past as well. So she is here today. And that in order to have an odd number of members, which is desirable for voting purposes, I do need to recruit one more. So the mayor put out a general press release for applications for a number of committees that have openings right now. So hopefully within a month or two, and I'm going to look back at other applications that had come in. Interestingly, it seems like there have been some for Parks and Shade Tree, but Parks and Shade Tree has the criteria that you have to be a resident. So I've looked at those to see if people that applied to Parks and Shade Tree might want to join our group. So hopefully we'll be full up again. And as I say, we've had good fortune since the beginning of having very, very little turnover, and you know, getting new blood in is good too. So thank you, Bunky, for all you've done here, and appreciate you serving on Parks and Shade Tree.
Yeah, and I appreciate you all, especially Susan, for chairing the committee.
Yeah, so the next thing is approval of minutes, and got a little behind. So there are only 2 this time, the ones that Joan took for February 17th, 2021, and the one still catching up from the previous group's meetings, the one for April 12th, 2019. So we have to vote differently on those because not everyone was part of the group in 2019. So I guess I'll first ask if there are any changes to the one on February 17th, the most recent meeting. Any comments or changes? Is there a motion to approve that one?
A motion to approve the February 17th.
Okay, a second?
Minute.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any opposed? No. Okay. Now, for the meeting on April 12th, let's see. I guess that would mean that Bob and Joan and Katie, you were you were there then. Yeah.
I've
so
been here
Bob and
since the
Joan-
beginning.
Right, yeah, that's right. No. So Bob and Joan are the only ones that wouldn't vote on that one. Everybody else can vote on that one. Is there a motion to approve that?
Motion to
Motion to
approve.
approve.
Well, okay, second.
Second.
Okay, and all in favor? Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, all right, and then any opposed? No. Okay, all right, so we get those out of the way. Interestingly, 5 minutes ago got a note from Ann that we had a piece of correspondence from today that was being actually dropped off at City Hall. And it literally was dropped off like 10 minutes ago. I haven't even read it yet, but I've had a request to read it, and it looks interesting, so I will. It's a page long, so bear with me. This comes from Kitty Cole, who lives on Olive Street, whose house backs up to Lake Gerard. She's been in the city a very long time, wonderful lady, and is very interested in trees. So she sent us this message. The headline is, "Welcome to Rehoboth Beach, Tree City, USA." From big cities like Anaheim, California, to small towns like Rehoboth Beach, towns nationwide have benefited from higher property values, decreased energy costs, cleaner air, and more beautiful environments, all because of trees. As successful as the Tree City USA program is, however, much more needs to be done because the nation has experienced a serious decline in tree cover in urban areas. According to Time magazine, Washington, D.C. has lost half its tree cover. San Diego has lost 25%. Tree cover in Chicago and Philadelphia is 20% of what it once was. One representative of the U.S. Forest Service has stated that urban deforestation compares with what's going on in the world's rainforests. The state's desire for millions of people living in towns and cities, the very necessities of life are at risk. Safety from storms and flooding and relief from respiratory diseases like childhood asthma are provided by trees. Clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, and clean shade are essential to life itself and dependent on a healthy urban forest. It is remarkable that trees address all of these challenges, a simple and unifying solution to many complex issues facing today's towns and cities. If ever there was a time for trees, now is that time. And the Tree City USA program is the universal framework for urban forestry management. Abundant trees, healthy trees, and well cared for trees in towns and cities all across America. We can't risk the pace at which storms are becoming more and more catastrophic. We can't risk the urbanization of the world that puts people face to face with dangerously hot, air-polluted cities without abundant trees to protect them. This is a time when we need the Tree City USA program to be stronger than ever. And she says that's excerpted, some of that is excerpted from the Arbor Day Foundation in Lincoln, Nebraska, and signed Kitty Cole. So we rarely get correspondence, so it's nice to have that, especially the timing is good because of our day up and because our work on the tree ordinance. But in turn, I guess actually I'm not sure I have much of an update other than to say that I did send out to everyone the document that I'd put together for the tree for the special meeting the other day, and we are going to be talking about the objectives of the tree ordinance in a few minutes on the agenda. So I think that's probably the only update I have since we already did the update. So why don't we go right into old business and an Arbor Day update from Andrea. Oh, you're muted.
Hi. It may come as no surprise, but we will not be having an art reception at City Hall. So everything is in place to do an in-person program at the elementary school. And basically, we are awaiting word from, I think, the city as well as the school as to how many people we can have. The one piece of Arbor Day that has to happen is the mayor has to either publish or read the proclamation. And if there's no in-person Arbor Day, we could publish that on the website, on the city's website. And I think we have to plant a tree. And we can do that at the elementary school, or we could use Lake Avenue. So there are just a bunch of different ways this could play out. But basically, everything is in place. The one piece of Arbor Day that is going to happen, the elementary school kids will have their posters, their Arbor Day posters hung in the windows of City Hall. So that is going to happen. And they'll be able to walk by with either their class or their parents and see that hanging. So we'll be doing that on the 29th, and the 30th of April is the day of Arbor Day. So those things will be hanging. Any questions?
So there is going to be something, I guess I hadn't realized that there's a possibility that the proclamation would have to be published on the website instead of read. There's going to be something at the school, right?
Yes, I mean, we are ready. I'm awaiting word from the school as to timing, and I think they are basically trying to figure out what the guidelines are and how many people we can invite.
Right.
So we can be out at the same time. So absolutely. I mean, that piece is there. And we're ready to go. All the pieces are in place, just awaiting numbers basically, and a go ahead.
And it's an outside event, so.
It is an outside event. And of course, masks will be required.
Right, okay. And remind me, last year in 2020, there was nothing at all, right?
We did not, it was totally canceled. Yes.
Okay, well, I'm glad to see it coming back in some form today, and it'll be nice. I guess the kids will be told that they can go by City Hall and look at.
Yes. We'll have to go to this school and announce the winners anyway, in one form or another. So yes, they'll be invited.
Okay. Yeah.
Susan, on a very positive note, in the last couple of days, cleanup has finally started on the east side of the school. In other words, the west side of Turtle Bridge. And they are now completing the building of the little walkway tower, putting the old school signage up. And I talked to the guys yesterday morning when I was on a dog walk, and they said that they're going to continue, weather permitting. They're going to get that whole area cleaned up, and they're going to do some mulching and some other things in that area. So by Arbor Day, by the end of April, hopefully it'll be in very nice shape compared to the way it has been for many, many months.
No, that's great. That's really good to know.
Could I just say a word to Liz? Liz, the folks, the maintenance crew has agreed to pick up the tree, the willow oak, and to plant it. So we're set with that.
Did you want a willow? I thought you wanted a willow, not a willow oak.
Willow oak is what we've decided on. Willow
Okay.
or willow. She was up in the air about willow or willow oak, but willow oak is what she wants.
Did you guys decide a size? I can't remember what we talked about with size.
I'm not the arborist, Liz. Just something that's not sticky looking, you know?
Well, that's up to you guys. Tell me what size you want and I'll try and get it.
All right.
They
Okay.
said the nurseries get their trees in around the end of this month. So in the next couple of weeks, you should have an idea of availability and stuff.
Okay.
So,
Okay. The good news is I don't have to drag that tree in a truck, okay? The maintenance guys said they'd do it.
okay.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
You could do 2 to 2.5 inch caliper.
Okay. Is that what size you guys all agree on?
Yeah. I was going to say at least 2. Yeah. I would hope.
Yeah.
2 to 2.5 inch. That would be not hugely expensive, but a decent size.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Kate.
You're welcome.
Do we have a backup species if the willow oaks aren't good or available? I mean, that's usually pretty common, but I don't want to assume.
Well, we went to that because she thought that was more common, and it would.
It is.
But if the willow is, I don't know if you can find a willow. Otherwise, just talk to me. I'll get back to her.
All right. Well, I'll leave the willow as a backup. But yeah, the willow, both of them are pretty common. Like I called one nursery, the closest one in Georgetown, and they said they get willows in pretty common, like it's a normal tree. So
Good. All
that
right.
could be the backup then.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that update, Andrew, and thank you especially for all your hard work, as it seems like it's an ever-changing event based on the fact that we are still,
Yes.
still have limitations because of the COVID. So
Yeah, flexibility.
yes, absolutely, that's what's called for. Okay, so the next thing on old business is an update on the program, the Commemorative Tree program to date, because I've been spending some time in the last month really looking at the data, the actual dollars and that have come in and what's been spent and all of that. And the really good news is that the total contributions to date, and the program is approximately 1.5 years old. It started in I guess basically October of 2019. We have raised $33,935. So that is really just incredible. And one of the things that it sort of shot up recently, because after that farmers market event in holiday season, we've had actually 6,000 in donations since then. And one of the things that says to me is that these kind of events are great, fundraising to have during the year. Even though the program is ongoing, to do these periodically really works in some, getting the donations up.
I have a call into Pat about scheduling a time
Right.
For the summer at the farmers market.
Okay, and we would do that, I guess, once in maybe in early summer.
I think so. I think June is going to be the best. If I think about the ebb and flow, I think maybe June.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. And I think we also have an opportunity to obviously there'll be publicity for Arbor Day, so that's another opportunity at least to get the word out, if not a specific fundraising event, but certainly gets the word out. And the other would be whenever the trees are planted at the Lake Avenue Streetscape project, because the program was going to underwrite some of those, although I'll let Liz talk about that in a minute, because I don't really know how many of those. So of the nearly 34,000 that's been raised so far, there is a balance in the fund of about 19,000. And part of that is just because of all those donations that have come in recently, there's no way for them to have been spent yet. So I sat down with the city staff and with the accountant in particular, and he had suggested that we set aside 10% of the funds for maintenance. And I wanted to bring that up because in the past, when the program was first started, even before it was started, when Tony was sharing, we had all talked about what the objective would be, and obviously the main one is the planting of trees. We didn't want it to be used for anything other than the planting of trees. And the brochure does say that it is specifically to support the planting of trees. However, reading that, I do think that maintenance is a part of support. And if we're talking about maintaining the trees that are put in as part of the program, and this would be, of course, after any year guarantee or year maintenance plan that may come with the planting, then I think that might be an appropriate figure. It's a low enough figure, and in this case, it would leave us with about 17,000 to put toward tree planting in the next fiscal year, which starts April 1st. What do you all think of that?
I think it sounds like a great idea.
I would agree. I think that's a great idea. Maintenance is always, I think, an issue with trees as they mature.
Right.
I think we've learned the hard way in some of the other parts of the city. I think it's really important.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't any confusion about the fact that, we had said that it would all go toward planning, that there's a little bit that, needs to support the planning as the wording in the brochure. So I don't actually think we need to update the brochure or anything on that. And then does somebody want to give an update about either Liz or Katie about the Lake Avenue streetscape? Because I don't know exactly when that's being done or how much of it would really be attributable to Commemorative Tree.
We can, if we want, when we do the bids, we always put specific line items for the plants. Mm-hmm. So I could price, we'll get the prices for all the trees individually. So it's up to the committee if we want to use, it certainly will not take all of the budget category for them. So it's up to you all if you only want to partially do it, or we want to, fund all the trees through the donations. It doesn't matter either way to me.
When would you expect to have costs?
Hopefully soon. So, because we want to do it this spring. So trying to get everything finished up so we because there's been quite a few changes as the project has gone along. So trying to get everything somewhat in its final version, and we're pretty much there right now. So. Okay.
So I think our next meeting is, it's the second Friday in April. Do you think you'd have them by then?
I don't know, honestly.
That's fine. That's fine. But that would be good. That way we could sort of pick, to some extent how many based on cost and based on other priorities, because you had also mentioned to me you've had requests. Tell the group about requests for street trees.
Yeah, so if anybody doesn't know, we've had it online for a few years now. It's one of the things I did when I started here, because there was no mechanism for people to actually request street trees. So it's just a simple form online. And I've had, I think this winter, I've had about 3 requests through that. So you can generally count on these trees costing around $500 it varies from species and size, but that's a good figure to kind of budget for in that 5 to 6 range. So I think we had about a dozen trees for phase 2 of Lake Avenue. So yeah, that might be around 6,000-7,000, somewhere in that range for those trees specifically. And that number usually includes the planting, the mulching, the staking, but not, and usually they include the day-to-day, the maintenance in there too. Sometimes not, depends on how we write up the bid packet. But that give you an idea if we have 17,000 of how much would go to that.
Well, and at a previous meeting, we had talked about, in fact, I think it was 2 or 3 meetings ago, all of us coming up with the priority plantings for next year. And we were going to just see where the common denominators are. So, we can spend a few minutes now talking about that if you want, or because I think we can, since I have planting priorities on the agenda, or we can just, make that a topic for the next meeting where we can all, formally kind of come up with our top 3 planting areas. I mean, does anybody want to, you might have an opinion about that, whether we should do that now or next time?
I'd say do it now if everybody came prepared, because you did mention it a couple of meetings ago.
Right. Yeah. I just didn't specifically say this time, come with your list. So I didn't know if people remembered that. But yeah, I mean, what are some ideas about where we should go beyond Lake Avenue and the ongoing street tree program?
Susan?
Yes.
I think we should go revisit Munson Street and talk about doing the entire street. We started there and it's not done.
Right. Okay.
So that would be a priority for me.
Okay.
So I don't know if anyone else has ideas.
I agree with you, Elise. With that would be a priority.
One of the sense I have about Munson is that in the 200 block, that's narrower planting area than in the 300 block. Is that right, Liz?
I think you mentioned that before and it surprised me. So I can't say one way if it's less than 3 feet wide. I did not, I guess it wouldn't surprise me, but I didn't know that for a fact. I do, a couple of years ago when I went through everything, I know there was only about 20 planting spots left on Munson.
Okay, well that's
a
lot.
That's not a lot. That's not a lot compared to the other streets, but
yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that's all I can say with that one. I mean, maybe it's just under 3 feet.
Okay, but there would be space there.
Yeah, for the rest of Munson.
Okay, great. Yeah, then I think that should be. I think I agree with Elise. I think that should be on the list.
Liz, what's the minimum width for a street tree that's needed between curb and sidewalk?
Well, a lot of places say 5 feet, but since that would leave us with no street trees, it seems to be with 3 feet, we can still get, as long as it's contiguous, right? So as long as it's 3 feet wide and a good length, with at least soil in there and not pavers or bricks or something, seems like 3 feet can support certain trees with a little bit of smart species selection.
That's the key.
Yeah, I think once we get down below 3 feet, I'm not saying a tree wouldn't live because that's not true, but the smaller the spot is, the harder it is to keep it alive and healthy. So you're better planting out your better spots first and then doing the more challenging spots, better bang for your buck with the more space.
Well, one of the reasons I ask, and thanks for that, Liz, is that, there's a long stretch on Hickman, if particularly going towards Scarborough, on the west side of Scarborough, where they took out some very large trees 1 to 2 years ago. I can't remember the date, because they were bumping up the sidewalk, and then they replaced curb and sidewalk, and trees were not replaced. And I think it's because it's a fairly narrow area. But that is a really barren area, particularly in the summer on hot days. I frequently walk through that, and I think, this area, it looks like a desert. It's like a desert because there's just no greenery. There's nothing above this sidewalk and the tree. And so maybe we could revisit and see if there's species that would be available. Maybe asking homeowners if they would, if a street tree could be put on the house side of the sidewalk, if there's any options to do that, where there may be enough space for a tree to grow in a healthy way.
You mean like the city putting a tree on private property?
Yeah, and I understand that there's issues around setting a precedent and so on, but if they don't have the width between the sidewalk and the curb, at least it may be worth thinking more about.
Yeah, well, Dick, one of the things that I think we ought to be looking at long term, and I haven't brought this up at commissioner meetings yet, but you know how every year there's the street paving project that usually does 3 or 4 blocks. I think we've got to look at doing more bump outs, which of course the problem with that for public works is it will mean that they'll be able to do fewer street paving because the bump outs cost something. I don't know how much they cost. Do you know, Liz, how much it costs to do a bump out?
No. I can't imagine it's that much money though. I mean, all it is a concrete curb and soil. So I wouldn't think it'd be in the grand scheme. I mean, it also depends on how many bump outs, what kind of retrofit around it we're doing.
Right. Well, that's it. Yeah.
If it takes up parking space,
well,
that could be the killer with that, because it's not just the cost of the bump out, then it's $2,000 a year that we're not getting in parking fees or whatever it may be. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know if everybody likes the bump outs on the original Lake Avenue streetscape or not, but
personally,
the way they came about was a little funky, but I like them. They're good traffic calming devices. They add a little protection to the crosswalk we have, and they provide a little bit more growing space for trees. So
I think it's very attractive.
Okay, I didn't know. The one thing, they do create a little bit of a maintenance issue. If you notice in the kind of the curves where it meets the road and the curb, there's always debris accumulated there because the street sweepers can't quite get it. But I'd say that's a minor inconvenience in the grand scheme. So
one of the ways to get around losing parking spaces, putting them close to the corner where there's not a parking space anyway, right?
I think it just depends on the layout of the street, right? Because sometimes you might end up with oversized spaces.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like I'm just thinking the way the one we have, like with the flanking the crosswalk there, I think that worked out pretty well. I don't think it really took up spaces, but that being said, I mean, it's a fight in the public space, right? Whether it's outdoor dining, trees, benches, lights, bike racks, parking.
No, right.
So that has to all be balanced, because what good are 1,000 parking spaces if it's ugly? I mean,
no, yeah.
So, I think with that phase of Lake Avenue, I think they did a good job. Whether or not that cost us 3 parking spaces, I don't know, but I think it looks balanced at least.
Right. And that would be the key. Also to use it at places where there is no other option.
Yeah.
And they're going to be places like, and I agree with Dick, that block of Hickman, I avoid in the warm weather, even coming up soon, not just the heat of the summer. I just avoid going down that block after I walk anywhere else but that block, because it's,
and see, when we talk about our priority planting spots, we have to decide whether or not we want to take into account that, where we're saying, okay, it's barren, because that also means there aren't trees in private property yards.
Yeah.
or if we want to just take into account the vacant city space.
Right. Well,
So I have a list of the number of vacant spaces per street, discounting the ocean blocks. And we can maybe take that list, and then you can even look probably on Google Maps aerial view as well as in person and say, okay, well, Laurel may have the most number of vacant spaces, but at least there's some private property trees there. So maybe even though Hickman has less vacant spaces, we'll pop that up to the top because it seems more barren.
right.
So
Yeah,
I think
that'd be a good list to get. I mean, that's something that's fairly, I mean, you've got, I mean, it's not now, obviously, but for like a future meeting, you have that?
I have it right in front. Now, I did this a couple of years ago. So like what Commissioner Byrne was talking about, if there was a project on Hickman that removed 3 trees, it might not be 68 available spots on Hickman. And maybe those 3 trees, only 2 can go back. It might be 70 instead of 68.
Yeah, okay, right, okay.
But it would give us at least I could update that relatively simply, but it would at least give us a starting spot to go from, like a solid basis based in facts, and then the opinion and analyzation can pull things up or down.
Okay, that would be great. I'd love to see that. Yeah, Katie.
The other place that seems very barren, and there are not many street trees or private property trees, is Philadelphia, down the block. I guess that's the 3rd block of Philadelphia, the one with the that has the I'm going to date myself, the
Dinner Bell Inn.
Dinner Bell Inn. Yeah. The Dinner Bell Inn.
I think Liz told me that was one of the street tree requests is on that block.
I think I want to say like Delaware, Philadelphia, and I can't remember the 3rd one.
Okay.
Well, and then Philadelphia, we did lose a few trees due to curb, sidewalk, road work. And they had really outgrown it. They had gotten pretty bad. It wasn't one of those where we could have kept them. Like the tree was 35 inches in diameter and there was only 30 inches of right of way type of deal. So I remember that from a few years ago. Let me look, Philadelphia. Yeah, I have Philadelphia as having 29 empty spots. So it's only minus any ocean block. So almost 30 in one block. It seems pretty high to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is all good to have. This is really very educational. Any other comments on that before we go to the next one? And the only reason I'm hurrying along is because we're limited to an hour.
Please, Amanda.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment? Liz, when we're looking at trees, or this is to the whole group, what I've noticed, and I'm sure all of you have noticed too, when a tree keeps on growing around electrical wires, the state, county, whatever, in Bethesda or Delmarva will come in and they literally hack the trees. And that's not very healthy for the trees, because I'm not sure if all these people are trained arborists. Is it a good idea to look at trees that will have a growth limit of 40 feet before they start hitting the electrical lines, or at least maybe like a lollipop looking tree that will provide shade but will stop growing, or it'll be easier for electrical companies to trim so it can be attractive, instead of seeing one whole side of a tree and then the other is completely bare because of the electrical line?
Yeah, so you'll have like a list of utility friendly trees, but generally under the wires, we only put trees that'll max out at like 25 or 30 feet. So, I mean, so that pruning done by Asplin, which is contracted by here, Delmarva Power, but depending on where you are, your utility company, that is a federally mandated clearance. So we have absolutely no control over what they do and how they do it at all. We're very lucky in the last few years I've been able, so through Delmarva Power, they hire a consulting utility forester through Davy. And, Delmarva Power also has foresters and arborists on staff. So they have a pretty good crew, but we've been lucky that I've been able to establish a good relationship with them. So they let us know when they're coming in to do things. They technically don't have to do that. They try to keep goodwill because they know people get upset. And we've been lucky. We haven't had many removals over the years from them. And I just think back to when I was working outside of DC and how it looked in Montgomery County when they went through. Based off of that, I say we're very lucky. So
I'm in Montgomery County, and I got in touch with the general counsel at Pepco. I was so furious of how they just come and chop them. And then I had one other, when we buy these trees in volume, $5,000-$6,000, do we get a discount? 10%, 15%?
Well, they don't put like $500 plus 10% discount, but generally the more you do, the better the price. Yeah. So if you're doing one tree, it might be, if you hired somebody to plant one tree at your house, it might be $700. If we're doing 20 of them, it might be $600.
Okay. And then regarding the maintenance, that will include like watering for a couple of years and fertilization of the trees.
Usually they might put some starter fertilizer in there, but generally we don't like to, because fertilizer in essence is nutrients, which is pollution. So we don't like to do that unless the soil test really calls for it. And luckily around here, our soil is generally pretty well balanced with all the nutrients and the pH, but so it depends on the fertilizer with the soil test.
And then the watering for a couple of years, that's in the maintenance?
Usually a minimum of 1. It just depends if it's 2 or 3.
1 year of watering?
Minimum, usually, yeah, if there's no irrigation.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Excellent discussion. So let us move now to spend our remaining time on this item about the new tree ordinance. I don't know if any of you watched the
Susan?
Yes.
I'm sorry, before we get to new business, I wanted to go back to the plantings on Lake Avenue and the spring planting, because in the last 2 weeks, Joan and I have been talking about this. There's been a lot of news reports on the cicadas and the brood X.
Bring that up. Forgot about
17-year brood X emerging, and Virginia, Virginia, Maryland, DC are going to be a hot, the core of where this is happening. I've seen Delaware on the map, and I'm wondering, Liz, if you're hearing from the Forestry Service about what's going to happen with the cicadas. Everyone's recommending that you wait for the planting this year, because the cicadas are going to go after the young trees and they could be killed off. So if there's any information coming from Delaware Forestry on what's happening in Delaware.
The Urban Forestry Department and the Ag Department, they have not sent anything out about it, nor have I seen anything on their website. I mean, we experienced cicadas pretty heavily, at least once when I was in my last job, and I didn't see any new plantings attacked from them. They tended to lay their eggs, make the slits in smaller branches on medium to mature trees. And then you would get those tiny slits where they would lay their eggs and then the branches would flag. So it wasn't really a big problem there. But like I said, I didn't see any new trees affected by it. So I don't know. I think they usually like those branches that are around a 1/2 inch diameter.
Yeah, new trees wouldn't have too many that would be that.
Yeah, I just remember all the hubbub around it, everybody panicking and us getting all these calls. And then at the end, I had say 400 clients, and at the end I had 5 actual issues from the cicadas. So it was this big buildup, and then there wasn't much that actually happened, which is a good thing, because there's not much it's not like you can spray the tree or do something like that to protect them. I mean, I'm thinking, I guess maybe they could put a slit in the trunk of the trees. I don't I don't know about that. That seems strange to me, but I guess it's possible. I mean,
can I ask you a question? Maybe we could ask the Forestry Service, because the other day I watched a workshop with Doug Ptolemy, and that question came up, and he had advised that you should probably plant in the fall.
Really?
I mean,
I don't know if he was, he was referring to the Eastern Seaboard. And his workshop was in Virginia, so I don't know how that applies here in Delaware. But
you'd be surprised at how, I mean, maybe it's the same, but you'd be surprised at how different things are here. Like all the diseases and the problems we had in Montgomery County, like here, I just so rarely see the issues we have, luckily, so rarely see the issues we have here, even though it's kind of the same climate. I don't know, but it's definitely something to look into, because I mean, all the ground is getting stabilized, but it'll look, I mean, maybe they could do the planting of all the shrubs and ground covers and do the dozen trees after, but all that would do would probably just be increase the cost.
Survive.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
They do say, end of May, June is going to be the prime time for the cicadas.
Well, did you say that is Delaware or no?
I don't know.
No, I was on the Doug Ptolemy presentation as well, but the Arlington arborists and naturalists are all saying in Virginia, at least Northern Virginia and DC, they're going to wait to plant trees. They're going to wait till fall. I don't know about Delaware.
Well, and the article that was in the Post that you sent, I mean, that had a map, and the entire state of Delaware was shaded in the map. But as was a good portion of southern Pennsylvania. But I don't know what degree, because the text of the article was mostly about Virginia and DC.
Yeah. I mean, do you guys remember, like, it probably have been like 7 years ago that they were kind of bad over in the DC area. I don't know if they were bad here at the time.
Yeah.
Well, it's something to keep track of anyway. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Susan.
All right. Yeah.
There's a website called Cicada Mania.
What? Yeah.
We can consult that.
We had the first meeting to talk about the tree ordinance at our special meeting on Tuesday, and I will say, not much happened. So, my feeling is that, well, first of all, this group, and maybe we can't do it in 20 minutes, I don't know, but we could, I think we are going to have another commissioners meeting before our next meeting, so we should make the best use of time. But the goal would be to set objectives that we would like to see the tree ordinance address and accomplish. And the discussion was supposed to take place on that on Tuesday, but the chair of the Law Oversight Committee was not able to make the meeting. And I had done a document which I sent to you all, which basically compared the objectives of both the current ordinance as well as the version that the Planning Commission did in 2014, as well as the current version of the Law Oversight Committee. And from that, we need to just establish the objectives so that, and then I favor, I don't know what Dick thinks about this, but I favor just right after that, really getting into it. Because I think that's where that's where the discussion is really going to get down to brass tacks, is the individual, clauses within the ordinance. But I know that the mayor is keen on starting with objectives. So I'll just say at the outset, and I'm not going to give the whole overview that I gave at the meeting the other day, because I went back and looked at it and it was 10 minutes and I don't want to waste 10 minutes. But at the top of the Law Oversight Committee's revision, they do say that the purpose of the ordinance is to preserve, protect, and maintain the wooded seaside character in the city by preserving its high tree canopy and native species. And frankly, I was glad to see the native species added to that. So, I mean, that's an overarching goal right there. But the question I guess I would ask is, can we do that in the tree ordinance, and what should the specific objectives of the tree ordinance be?
Well, I have a thought about that, is that it should be, for one thing, it should be clear and concise and easy to user friendly, so that you know, and this is selfish on my part, but so that I don't have to spend, like an hour trying to explain to somebody what a client about what it's,
Right.
What's happening. I mean, it really is important, I think, for it to be user friendly for the citizens.
Yeah, and I'm remembering back to, I think that was one of the main reasons why the revision was requested, the revision even that the Planning Commission did in 2000, why that was requested was to make it simpler and easier to understand. Yeah. Definitely.
Well, the thing that I think it has perplexed, well, the citizenry, but in addition to, in at least in the discussion with trying to revise it and trying to implement those things, well, I think was the main issue was a clear goal or set goals, and then an ability to monitor and assess those goals. And that was always kind of difficult with regard to, what is the city's, goal coverage? How is that, how is that measured? All that kind of stuff. And I think it was somewhat nebulous in the past. And I think, but the good news is, I think, various discussions that we've had and information provided is that I think we have better tools at our disposal to be able to be able to measure tree canopy, in particular the character of the tree canopy with regard to how many tall trees we have, as opposed to just an aerial photo and that kind of stuff. So I would like to think that in this process, we can really try to evaluate those tools and how effective those tools will be, because I think ultimately, the city needs to know. I mean, it's like, sort of anecdotal. Obviously, we're losing trees. To what extent? And I mean, it's something. This is a management. To me, it's an idea of managing urban forest, and we need data and to be able to do that. So that's kind of like the key area that I'm sort of interested in. Is how do we decide what we want, and then how do we implement what we want? So.
Okay. Yeah, and I agree that getting the coverage. In fact, I was going to talk to Liz about that outside the meeting, because I know that there are maps, or there are tools that will allow that today. And my understanding is that they're a lot more sophisticated than the previous ones, which means they also come up with a higher percentage because they measure more than just the canopy, which is good and bad, in a way. So, and in fact, the canopy goals. Last time I saw, and this was fairly recently, on one of the state sites, had our tree canopy down as 50.4% or something like that, and it was like the second highest in the state after maybe Henlopen Acres or something. And some years ago, our goal was 42% or something. So, but it's not as though we've greatly achieved our goal. The technique of measuring has changed. So when you move the yardstick, you have to revisit the goal. And I honestly don't know what the ideal is now, or even that measurement was from, and this would be interesting to see. And I'm hoping maybe the GIS maps that are going to be part of the new CDP will also be a way, if they're not in there already, that we could go back and fine tune those maps to get that information in there as well. But that 50% number comes from.
Yeah, but my concern is going back to that discussion you just read about the seas, about the seaside nature and the trees and all that kind of stuff. Like the perspective that we have this aesthetic, this aesthetic standard to try to adhere to, and just saying that our tree canopy is X doesn't really reflect that, because I think you want to see tree canopy in the neighborhoods. We don't want all the tree canopy set up in the parks that we have here, and everything else is a barren landscape. So I think, it's going to get in the weeds. That's a terrible analogy, but that we need to quantify all that stuff, and maybe I'm just throwing this out here, of the various neighborhoods, like the pine says one standard, we have another standard here, but it all fulfills that aesthetic and, standard that we want to try to achieve. So it's going to get complicated, is what I'm saying.
So there'd certainly be a different cover, but there'd also potentially be a different goal for different parts of the city. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, I'm just saying there would be an overarching goal, but I mean, to me, it's like you got to be able to say, I mean, if you just say, oh, we meet that goal all the time because we have all the trees in Central Park, you know what I mean? So and that's not really achieving what you're trying to do, So I think you have to sort of, and I don't think these are going to have to be like strict guidelines, but I mean, it's going to be that you have to, your goal is your expectation, or is going to be, you want to achieve such and such in this area. Let's say, I'm just saying in the Pines, and another in Schoolview, and another in South Rehoboth, North Rehoboth, and all that kind of stuff. So that those are the graduated goals, So
yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think that's good. Okay. What else? Andrew, you look like you're thinking.
I am. I was just thinking, if the goal is both to maintain and increase, I think we have to ask the question, increase. Does the current, as currently written, do we see that there's the potential for an increase? And I also want to get back to what Bunky said, which is that, it's not, there are certain places where you need increase, and certain places where, there are certain places clearly that could use more trees. But the whole question of increase, to me, is there more we can do to keep our trees and to increase?
Well, I would just say, does increase mean replacement?
Well,
I mean, I don't know if you're really increasing, but you're maintaining. We're trying to maintain the canopy, and just by the natural process, you're going to lose canopy.
True.
And we don't have it isn't like it's a forest where an acorn falls and naturally a new tree comes out of it. It's all got to be kind of deliberate because we're in a built-out community. So that's what I'm saying. You need to be able to measure it and assess it and all that. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think it'll be important to know. Do you know, Liz, right offhand, like how much acreage is in all our parks combined? Do you have any idea?
I don't have it memorized, but I want to say it was more than you think, because Lake Gerard would count as a whole park.
Right.
And that's like, 10, 15 acres. So I want to say it was like around 30, maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
But they haven't done the LiDAR sent in years, 3 years, 4 years.
But the state hasn't?
Yeah.
Right. Well, that number I saw on the site was from 2014. So.
Yeah, but they did they'll like do the study in say 2017, but it'll be from 2014's map. Do you know what I mean? It won't be up to date from when they actually do it.
Right. Yeah.
Which is strange. I forget the reasoning behind it, but.
Okay. Yeah. And there's always a delay. There's always going to be a couple of year delay probably on.
I guess it seemed like a long delay to me, but that's how they did it. So, but they didn't define. I think maybe they marked out some parks and did the tree coverage for the parks individually. But I don't think other than that, then it would just be City of Rehoboth 50%.
Right. Yeah.
Minus Central Park, Grove Park, well, including them, but they would do those canopy individually, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. Vic, any thoughts, since we have to do this ordinance at the commissioner level, any thoughts about what your goals would be? Because I think you said something at the meeting.
Well, I'm like you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, what I said, I think, is very similar to what's being said. here by committee members. And that is that, good intentions go a long way in writing regulations and codes. And people have worked long and hard over the last couple of decades on this tree code. And yet it's like a couple of you have said, if it's not understandable, I think Kate just said, if it's not practical, if you can't easily apply it, and you have to spend an hour trying to explain it, and it still is open to some interpretation, then where does that get us?
Right.
And Susan did a nice job at our commissioners meeting a couple of days ago, talking about the tree loss that we have experienced in the city of Rehoboth Beach. And yet that's at the same time that we have this, very kind of detailed, extensive code. And so why does one happen when we have this code and when the code is intended to preserve, maintain, et cetera, et cetera? So I just think that we have to keep that in mind going forward, that we understand what the goals are, and then we put code and regulations that really are practical, that are not open to all of this extensive interpretation, and that the people are not appealing over and over again because they don't understand, or that one person interprets it this way and 5 years later it gets interpreted quite differently. So I don't know where that gets us, but it does say that it is a complex and complicated kind of a thing to work at.
Well, that's been one of the most, commonly expressed objectives, I guess, since the beginning, is to make it simpler and fairer and easier to understand and all that. And but in a way, it's also, it's hard to do that without maybe even, I don't know, giving up a little more, having it be more flexible, and plus the realities of building are what they are. That lots are going to as smaller houses or empty get torn down, or some of the empty lots, then there's just going to be tree loss with that. So we want to be able to give the arborist the authority to be able to move a house, to require that a builder move it slightly in order to save a tree. And I know that's talked about, but it doesn't always happen because they don't always agree to do it, and we don't always enforce it. But in a way, I think the other thing we haven't talked about, and this isn't part of the objective, but when we get down to the nitty gritty, I hope we will talk about it, is it would be nice to build in some incentives. I can't tell you off the top of my head what those might be, but I would love to be able to build in some incentives for people to be able to.
Thank you, Susan, for raising that, because I do think that that's really important.
Yeah. In fact, maybe that's something we should talk about, if this is a good segue, since we've got 3 minutes left, into the items to include on future agendas. But maybe that's what we should start talking about, isn't it?
Could we discuss that maybe at the next meeting? Where it's interesting to me, particularly with all the development that's going on, and trees are coming down, and we are building bigger homes. And so, how do we incentivize the builder and the homeowner,
right,
to replace the trees without a fight and without threat of legal action? And is there a way we can do some sort of, I don't know, discount or monetary incentive in a way, or something? You plant X number of trees and you get a 5% tax break on this for 1 year.
Yeah.
Something like this.
Right.
I'll interrupt right there. The majority of new homes, a monetary incentive will not work here. Because I frequently hear pretty much every new home that, well, I'll plant whatever you want, I'll pay whatever you want if I can do X, Y, Z. So I don't know if that would be the way to go.
Raise the price, right?
Yeah. The money typically is not the driving factor here.
These days, you're absolutely right, and that's the voice, the practical voice speaking. And
well, it would work for me if I was building a new home and they gave me a discount, but that's not something I hear often here. But I'm sure there are other incentives that could have people interested for sure.
we should hash those out. I think that would be a good discussion to have. Because you probably hear about things from people that are building, Liz, that would, you know.
Well, you got to look at example tree codes, and that's where it gets into problems. If you look at any tree code touted as good or exemplary, they're not 8 pages, guys. They're 30, 40, 50. Okay. Now we're talking bigger cities, keep in mind, with big subdivisions, mass development. But a lot of times I've seen incentives related to off-street parking requirements, setbacks, that type of stuff. So we'll grant you a 50% parking reduction in order to retain one specimen, in order to retain a specimen tree, you know, or we'll grant you a 10% setback reduction in order to retain a specimen tree, that type of stuff, to make it easier. Because a lot of times if you can move the house back 5 feet, you'd end up with an extra tree or 2 in the front, but they can't move the house back 5 feet because there's a 15-foot backyard setback. Right. So those are the type of things I think would be a little bit more effective because they would give design flexibility at the start.
Right.
Liz?
I'm going through that exact same thing right now. And Liz, we spoke to Matt, my architect, and I on Tuesday. And we're, you know, it gets out of 50 by 100 lots. So it's very confined. And by the time you get the floor area ratio, you know, and I'm trying to stay at like between 2,000 and 2,500 square feet. Well, my architect is more concerned about saving the trees that are in back of the house without cutting them down. So the back of the house is going to be on pilings. You know, I'm not going to dig a full basement, but he's going to make sure that the back part of the house can be dug within the rooting system and saving it. I just love that 150-year-old oak that's in back of my house because it is a showstopper and there's no way I'm going to take it down.
That's good.
I'm working. And then the next thing before I start digging is to bring in the arborist, which I already work with Sussex Tree Company, is like, yes, this can go. Why is it leaning? And I'm learning about it. So I think maybe we can just start out the most inexpensive way is to start educating and provide the beauty of trees and start showing pictures like a house that cut everything down and a house that has shaded, and what do you like better? And slowly people might come around and alter their architectural renderings, some people, to save the trees. I don't know.
No, I think there's some people it won't matter. It's a vacation or an investment and they want as much bedrooms and patio as they can and as low maintenance outdoor as they can. But some people are like you, where they actually go to the site and pay attention to what's there. And that's, you know, somebody that's going to make it their home. You would hope that's what they do. And I mean, there's been so many studies nationwide about the increased value of mature trees in the front yard, increased value of landscaping for sales prices, shopping in the downtown, spending more time and money downtown in well-treated areas. I mean, the data is all there. Whether or not you can force people to look at it, I can't tell you.
But again, if we start with the visual aspects of it, like, you know, whether, you know, like on our committee site of a barren house and like a tree, and then something that is more lush. And I mean, I do rent out, but I have all these trees, and the compliments I get from all my renters is like,
oh, I'm sure.
I mean, I feel like I'm the oasis.
That is why people come here.
Exactly. And I think that's the message that we have to start, you know, and I'm not saying to go around town and take a picture of a house that cut down all their trees, because I would not want to be that homeowner who is like, this is not what you do, and this is what you do. So we can find a generic house someplace else or have a renter.
Google Street View is really good for that. You can go back in time and look at, there's a few streets I've used as example, looking down them. So it's not focusing on a specific house, but you can see the change.
Right.
Oh,
And then actually, we're running over time. So I'll let Katie talk, and then we got to talk about next meeting. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have to check out early. I have another call.
Yeah, it's not early. We're running over. They're gonna shoot. Go ahead.
Well, one thing that, I mean, to Elizabeth's point about, you know, the trees, showing one showing the good and the bad. I mean, that's great if for people that care, but most of the people are, so many people, it's about making money off of a big house that they rent out. I mean, maybe it's changing a little bit, but much of what has been put in has not been used by the homeowner at all.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a huge problem, because the people that are coming here building the house are like, well, we get our house and other people use it, and we're making money off of it. So what does it matter whether it looks, what does it matter whether or not we cut down all the trees?
Well, I just want to say that the values are established by the consensus of those who participated in the comprehensive development plan. So, if people want to, quote, build a house and make money,
Mm-hmm.
they're doing it in that environment, and they have to adhere to that environment. So
right.
I think,
Well, yeah.
how do you promulgate that, in how you operate the city?
That's the key.
You got to establish goals, and you got to establish goals and adhere to the goals and measure the goals.
Well,
Okay, we have, it's now a little after 11, so we need to close up. But the next meeting is on April 9th. And from what I heard earlier, one of the things we'd be talking about is, I guess, priority plantings, but with information that will then come from Liz on all the various spaces in town where there are possibilities, and we'll look and pick a bunch of them, right? And then we'll also talk about incentives. Does that sound?
I'm gonna bid everybody adieu here, because
Okay.
we'll
Great.
see you all.
All right. Well,
See ya,
Hi,
Can
Bunky.
I ask one quick thing of
Yes.
everybody? So we talked a couple meetings ago about the dock project. And I
Yeah.
don't know if the folks have been over there to take a look, but I would encourage you to do that and walk down the dock a bit and look. It looks to me like on the embankment, about halfway to 3/4 of the way down, we've had a washout or part of a washout there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's really our purview, or Liz, if you've seen that, or I think that's something that should probably be addressed in some way, whether that's by us or somebody else. But I would encourage everyone to just take a walk over, take a look, and see what you think, and maybe we could discuss it next time.
Okay. Great, we'll do that. All right, anything else? Otherwise, this meeting is adjourned.